All right, we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Guys, today we are going to talk about some studs and duds from the Indianapolis Colts game yesterday against the Detroit Lions. We are going to talk about some players that we believe, that I personally believe, were some of the studs, some of the players that played well, and also some of the players who left a lot to be desired. Now, just real quick, before we kind of dive into this, just want to make sure you guys understand. So, will be some players that I'll be talking about. There will be a couple on the studs or duds that'll be more of units collectively. So, just to get that out of the way, there will be a few individual players that I want to point out, and then there will be more of like a grouping of players, especially more on the dud side, which we'll get into here. But really excited to kind of jump into this one. In this game, I have 4 studs and I have 4 duds that I want to talk about today. But before we do that, just want to remind you guys, this episode is presented by Prize Picks. So be sure to visit prizepicks.com today. And when you do that, use the code JUICE to get $50 after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, starting off here with the positives. We got to talk about some of the studs here for the Indianapolis Colts. And the first one, I know it's going to be controversial. I know there's going to be people that balk at me putting this player on the list, but I think there's a good majority of Colts Nation that understands context for this one. And of course, I'm talking about Indianapolis Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson. Now, on paper, when you look at the pure stats, when you look at the box score, you look at it and you say, why is Anthony Richardson even close to this list? In fact, he should probably be put on the duds list. That's what a lot of people would say, right? I mean, after all, 11 of 28, 172 yards, 0 touchdowns, 61 yards rushing. I mean, that's nothing crazy, right? Well, I want to throw a few context clues into this to kind of help us make more of an informed decision, right? Because I know some people don't trust PFF. I understand that. But PFF has Anthony Richardson as one of the top players, top performers, top graded guys from this game. And this is exactly why. So, a few things of context here for each and every one of you guys who might be curious why Anthony Richardson makes this list. So, found a couple different stats on some different websites and, some different articles and stuff. Shout out to Andrew Moore for this article. A little bit of stats from this article. So shout out to him on this. So Anthony Richardson, obviously, nothing to write home about when you look at the stats. But here are a couple things that were going against AR in this game that made the stats look a lot worse than how he truly played in this game. So according to Next Gen Stats, Anthony Richardson was pressured 46.7% of his dropbacks yesterday, despite the fact that Richardson did not get sacked in this game. I mean, if you'll recall, there were multiple times where Richardson had defenders on his back. He had to either throw it away or he sometimes would make a couple crazy throws. But for the most part, he was under pressure, under duress for the majority of this game. Again, the Colts started 3 rookies, but the rookies, even though I would say Dalton Tucker was probably the biggest issue, I mean, Matt Gonzalez, Tanner Bortolini, I don't think they were as big of an issue as Quentin Nelson was. I mean, Quentin Nelson was terrible. And that's the kid that you're paying. That's the guy that's like your franchise guy that sets the tone. And he had probably his worst career game. So that resulted in Richardson constantly being under duress. I mean, that interior of that offensive line was absolutely getting decimated in this game. It was an absolute disaster. And that's the result right there. 46.7% of the dropbacks and somehow, some way did not take a sack. That's impressive in itself right there. But also with the offensive line. And I mean, I think the offensive line was probably the biggest culprit in this game. Had multiple penalties that were just absolute killer. Had multiple holding penalties and an eligible player down the field penalty. I mean, just everything. And it felt like those penalties a lot of times came in the big moments when Anthony Richardson had a huge pass. Like, for example, when you look at it, there were 2 holding calls on 2 different linemen, one on Braden Smith, one on Dalton Tucker, that eliminated 2 plays of 20-plus yards. And so that is kind of crazy in itself that you basically wipe off 40 yards. I guess it's 21 and 19, so not quite 220-plus. But you get what I'm saying. 2 plays that were 40 yards passing right there that are negated by holding calls. You had the big pass to Kylan Granson that got brought back because of Drew Ogletree holding. You had the drop pass by Drew Ogletree, right? You had Kylan Granson another time on a hot read when Anthony Richardson just, their lines were sending a bunch of guys. He threw it. Granson had nobody, near him. He just didn't turn around in time, and that was right on the money. He just wasn't ready for it. You had multiple things like that happening. Ashton Doolin, couldn't keep his feet in on a 30-plus yard pass. So when you factor all that in, it's kind of crazy here. And shout out to Andrew Moore again. So the Colts, in total, they had 8 offensive penalties on plays that totaled 98 yards. And of that, guys, 79 of those 93 were passing yards on 4 big completions by Anthony Richardson. So right there, guys, that's not even counting the 30-plus yarder to Ashton Doolin. That's not even counting Kylan Granson not looking for it, or Andrew Ogletree dropping the touchdown pass. That tells you so much in this game right there. The receivers were not helping. The offensive line obviously wasn't helping. The tight ends specifically, not even the receivers necessarily. The tight ends were not helping. And every time the receivers made a play, the offensive line did something stupid, or the tight ends did something stupid. So it's so impossible when you are consistently on the plays that are potentially helping you extend drives, when you are consistently making back-breaking penalties. I mean, it just screws you over. It just kills momentum. And so that's the case here. So when you look at purely from how Anthony Richardson played, I thought he played very well. Considering the circumstances, the stats will say Anthony Richardson looked bad. The eye test, the film will tell you something completely different in this game. So for that reason, I know I'm not alone in this. I know there will be people who highly disagree with me. That's okay. But when I look at what my eyes showed me yesterday, when I look at what different people who watch film are saying, I mean, we're all saying the same thing. It was not Anthony Richardson's fault yesterday. Now, was Anthony Richardson perfect? Absolutely not. I think especially in that fourth quarter, he wasn't as good as he was in the first 3 quarters. I think we can admit that. But again, the Colts were down at that point, 24-6. They were down multiple scores, right? So he kind of had to play some hero ball. Again, we're not saying that Anthony Richardson was perfect in this game, but I think he was a lot better. And I think he was probably the furthest thing from the issue yesterday. And this is kind of what I said in the live stream, and I don't know if I said it in the post-game recap or not, but I looked at it a lot like this. Anthony Richardson did not fail the Colts yesterday. The Colts failed Anthony Richardson. I mean, plain and simple, that's what happened in this game. So context matters here. People will look at the box score. People have already been looking at the box score. They point out the completion percentage. They point out all that stuff. Look, I don't care about that. All I care about is the quarterback giving guys opportunities. Now, Anthony Richardson can't force his offensive line to block. He can't force his receivers to catch the ball. He can't force his offensive line to stop committing stupid penalties. Like, he's only one guy. He's one of 11. He can only do so much. So, as frustrating as it was, I think AR actually showed you some positive signs. And actually, guys, the last 2 weeks, I have noticed a big difference in Anthony Richardson. His demeanor, obviously, you see it. He's very focused, very locked in. But also, I just feel like his comfortability in the pocket, his just overall awareness. And I know a lot of people don't like the fact that, when Anthony Richardson throws the ball away, obviously it counts towards that inaccuracy issue that everybody's talking about. But I actually view that as a positive sign, right? He's not trying to do something stupid, avoid a sack and losing even more, not trying to make a bad play worse. He's doing the smart thing and throwing the ball away. And to me, I look at that as a win. I really do look at that as a win. You can live to fight another down, but you can't do that if you're turning the ball over, if you're doing something stupid. So, say what you want, but that's part of the reason as well. Under pressure, nobody's open, he throws it away. I'm okay with that. Even if it doesn't look great on the completion percentage, I'm totally good with that. I really am. So enough about Anthony Richardson. I've talked about it to death, but he definitely, for me, was one of those studs, and I don't really care what other people say. I mean, to me, my eyes told me the story in this game, and its AR was far from the problem. I think it was actually one of the bright spots on this offense that was absolutely putrid on Sunday. All right, let's move on to the player that he was throwing to, and a player that I'll admit I was a little bit wrong on. Michael Pittman Jr. I thought maybe the Colts needed to consider putting him on IR, letting him rest the rest of the season. We obviously know he's been dealing with that back injury. He just hasn't really looked like the Michael Pittman last year. Right. And for obvious reasons, I mean, that's a serious injury, and credit to him. Kudos to him. He's been fighting through it. for the entirety of the season, but he just hasn't been the Michael Pittman we've been used to. But to give him the credit that he deserves, that was probably the best Michael Pittman's looked all year long. He had 6 catches for 96 yards. And to me, guys, Michael Pittman Jr. was a stud. Now with the news of Josh Downs going to be week to week, Michael Pittman's going to continue to be needed even more. And we'll see about Ashton Dulin as well. I mean, Michael Pittman, the fact that he's playing through this, he's going to continue to need to fight through this because the Colts are going to be without Josh Downs at least for the next couple weeks. So we'll have to see on that. But regardless, guys, Michael Pittman Jr., good to see him have a bounce-back type of game here and show that he can still be a good receiver when the Colts get him the football. And obviously, he's had some moments where he hasn't looked like Pitt that we all know and love. So anyway, Michael Pittman Jr., the second stud on the list for me. I just really felt like the Colts passing offense, when they actually didn't have penalties, I thought they looked pretty good. So Michael Pittman Jr., the leading receiver there, he's naturally going to be a guy. I mean, you can throw in Josh Downs because he had, like 60-plus yards. I don't even know the total yardage. It was kind of crazy. He had a lot of yardage yesterday that was wiped by penalties. But, we'll talk about Pitt because he did lead the team in receptions, and I definitely think he deserves some love. So Michael Pittman Jr. makes a list here for me for number 2.
Well, the 2024 NFL season for the Indianapolis Colts is in full swing. And with that, wanted to share the sponsor of today's video, Prize Picks.
When it comes to Prize Picks, this is going to be a great way for you guys, especially, to check out some of the stuff that Prize Picks has.
You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You heard me right. Only 4 correct picks. You can win 100 times your money, guys, on Prize Picks. Be sure to sign up today and get $50 off instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed.
So if you're looking specifically for the Colts stuff, that's definitely something you guys should check out. But if you're looking for, like me, more NFL stuff, there's all sorts of stats and stuff that you can check out and make your picks. And there's definitely guys that are very consistent, like Jonathan Taylor against the Houston Texans, that you really feel like you can probably feel pretty good about overall, right? And there's some other ones where you're like, I don't know if I would take the over on that. I don't know if I would pick them to hit that margin, right? So, guys, be sure to go check out all that stuff on Prize Picks. It's only a couple examples. There's all the different odds that you could hope for when it comes to that for Prize Picks. So I encourage you guys to go check that out, but definitely excited for this season, and hopefully you guys will be following along with us and everything with Prize Picks and what they do.
So be sure to download the app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Like I said, guys, it's a great way to continue to stay in with week-to-week life of the NFL, specifically with your favorite team, the Indianapolis Colts. So be sure to do that. Be sure to check out Prize Picks. And remember, Prize Picks, run your game.
Number 3 for me when it comes to the studs, I got to go with Indianapolis Colts rookie edge rusher, Latu. Latu was the highest graded player on the defensive side of things, according to PFF. He finished with 4 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. He now has back-to-back weeks where he has recorded a sack. And I just feel like Latu now, guys, is starting to come into his own a little bit more. He's starting to really do some things, and to give him credit, this was a very good Lions offensive line, and I felt like Latu really played well. And I know there were some other stats that didn't even necessarily show up here, but I felt like Latu was pretty disruptive. I mean, the Colts had 18 pressures. Latu was very, very much a part of that the entirety of this game. So Latu is a stud. I'm excited to continue to see how he progresses throughout the course of this season, because he kind of had his time there where he wasn't doing a whole lot. But I'm excited to see him continue to build on that. So Latu definitely deserves some love. And then the last guy I got to talk about, and just a player that's been so consistent for so many years with this Colts team, that is DeForest Buckner. He had 7 tackles in this game, and he also had a sack in this game. I mean, DeForest Buckner was taken over in this game, plain and simple. He was absolutely a stud. He was a menace in this game. And I just love DeForest Buckner. I love everything he stands for. And I just love to have him on this team. And I wish we could have some more success because he certainly is a player that deserves it, no doubt in my mind. But DeForest Buckner makes the list here for me for the final stud. And then talking about the duds, right? Because obviously with any loss, there's going to be a lot of duds. And so got to start. And like I said, there's going to be a lot more of these like collective units as opposed to individual players. But I might mention a couple players as well when it comes to some of these duds. But the first one I got to talk about in terms of the duds department has to be this running game. I mean, take out Anthony Richardson running the football. In this game, Jonathan Taylor was the only running back that touched the ball. He had 11 rushes for 35 yards in this game. So the offensive line obviously didn't do him any favors. It just really didn't feel like JT was able to get going. He did have a really good, like 20-plus yard run that got called back because of a holding penalty, right? So I know a lot of people like to throw the blame at JT, and obviously has some share of the blame, but this offensive line, I think just in total, you'll notice this trend. I mean, this offensive line was the biggest issue for this team in both the run and the pass department. So they definitely are the ones that deserve the majority of the blame, in my opinion. This running game was absolutely atrocious and really forced the Colts to be one-dimensional in this game and didn't give Anthony Richardson and company really any opportunity to do anything. And really the big reason is this offensive line's playing three rookies, one rookie that shouldn't touch the field, and Dalton Tucker, in my opinion. I think he's probably one of the worst guards in football. I mean, and in all fairness to Dalton Tucker, he's an undrafted rookie. He shouldn't probably be starting for this team, but we'll see on that. But regardless, guys, the run game for the Colts was an absolute dud in this game. No questions asked there. And then, of course, when it comes to the pass protection, the Colts were very bad as well. I already mentioned, some of the stuff when it came to Anthony Richardson and, the amount of pressure he was under pretty much the entire game. I think the league average is somewhere in the middle of 30, if that tells you anything right there. So absolute disaster there from this offensive line. Quentin Nelson, he's got to be held accountable. He was absolutely terrible. Both guards were terrible for the Colts in both departments on Sunday against Detroit. The Detroit's defenders on the interior were just absolutely feasting on these Colts guards pretty much all day long. So an absolute disaster. And also I'll throw in the tight ends as well, specifically Drew Ogletree. But I guess I'll throw in, there was two tight ends trying to block, and both of them absolutely got destroyed. And that destroyed a big play right there because apparently two guys can't block one defender. It was an absolute disaster. Just pass blocking in general for this team was an absolute disaster. And it's amazing that Anthony Richardson came out of this game not getting sacked once. So definitely a big bummer. And hopefully the Colts get back Bernard Ryman and fix their right guard situation because it's an absolute travesty right now what's going on this offensive line. All right. The final thing I want to talk about here on the defensive side of things, the defense, while I definitely think they played a lot better than the offense, they still had their share of issues as well. And I think the biggest thing that I got to talk about when it comes to this Colts defense, I got to really kind of talk about the pass defense in general. Now, when you look at it, on paper, you look at it and you say, okay, Jared Goff didn't have a passing touchdown in this game and all these things. You had 18 pressures on him, 3 sacks on him. I'm not talking about the D-line right now. I'm talking about specifically the linebackers and the secondary, specifically in the middle. It was an absolute disaster. Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed are horrendous in coverage. I mean, they're so bad, man. They completed 72% of their passes in this game. Jared Goff could not miss in this game. And a lot of times it was right over the middle. The middle of the field for the Colts on their defensive side of the ball, it was wide open all day long. It was an absolute disaster. I think linebackers are a lot bigger of a need than we're talking about. And I honestly don't think that really any of the linebackers we currently have are guys that I super feel confident in moving forward, especially when it comes to the passing department. The Colts need to heavily invest in that, in my opinion, in the offseason because Zaire and EJ they've both been just flat out bad in coverage this year. And Grant Stewart's not much better. I love Grant Stewart, but he's never been a pass type of guy. But yeah, I mean, it's just been really, really poor in general, continues to be poor. And it seems like anytime offenses have success against the Colts, it's always up the middle. It's always thrown to the middle of the field. It's always open. The linebackers couldn't cover you or me. I mean, it's been bad. It's been really, really bad. So With that being said, I don't know what's going to have to change there. I mean, I don't know if the Colts are going to go bench one of their linebackers, but it's just clearly not been up to par so far when it comes to the pass coverage for these linebackers. And for the secondary in general, I thought Jared Goff was just finding guys wide open way too often in this game. So, yeah, guys, that'll do it for studs and duds. I almost mentioned just like the third down defense for the Colts because it was also pretty bad in this game. But to kind of keep it into 4-4, I thought I'd go with the pass defense a little bit more here. But yeah, guys, that does it for studs and duds. Curious what you guys would say as well. Are there any other studs or duds that maybe I missed that you guys would have added as well? Curious your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. This is a reminder. Be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff so that you are in the loop when we drop fresh content just like this. Even though the Colts right now stink, we are going to continue to stay in it. So I hope you guys will join along with us in talking Colts. Good or bad, we are here, and we're going to give our honest take on it. So hope you guys will join along with us. But guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.